And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at the game Face to Face. Now the game, I know there's a channel about games, but there's a game called The Game. The game is a cooperative game in which you are trying to discard your cards in a specific order. I thought the game was okay. It's a clever game, but I just found it to be okay. My wife really liked it, but I found it, I was kind of intrigued by this one because this one's no longer cooperative. It's the same mechanisms from the game, but now it's a duel, face-to-face, head-to-head, mano-y-mano. Let's take a look. So this is a two-player head-to-head game. Each player is going to start with two cards in front of them. This one is your card 60, and this is your card 1. And you're not sitting next to each other like this. I'm just showing you both cards so that you can see how the players are going to work. Each player is going to draw a hand of 6 cards from their deck. Now, your deck is made up of cards 2 through 59. Both players have the same numbers in their deck. On your turn, you're playing cards on your piles here. This pile is always going down. So, for example, I could play a 53 here because that's lower than 60. After 53, I could play a 51. I could play a 26 on top of that, but I got to be careful because obviously the lower the cards get, the worse off. Here I can play a 3 because I'm going higher on the 1, and on top of that I could play a 22. And you see I have a 41. I could play a 41 on top of the 22, but I could not play it here. So that's essentially how the game's going to be working. You're going to be playing cards. On your turn, you must play 2 cards, but you can play more. If at any reason you can't play 2 cards, then you lose the game. Now, one of your 2 cards you can play on the other side. So let's say, for example, I'm the gold player. I play a 55. It's less than 60. And I'll say, you know what, I'm going to get rid of this 37. I don't want to use that yet. And I'm going to put the 37 here. You can play a card in an opponent's pile as long as you make it better. So here it's a 26. I made it 37. Now it's easier for my opponent to play cards. You may only play 1 card on your opponent's pile. Now when you're playing cards, let's say, for example, I have the 44 here, you must always play cards that are higher or lower on your own side. The exception to that is if the difference is exactly 10. So on top of this 44, for example, I can play a 34. So that's a way that I could go down. And in fact, you can do weird things like this. I might say, I'm going to play a 46 on top of that, and then a 47. Then I'm going to go down to a 37. On top of the 37, I'm going to play a 38. Then I'm going to go down to a 28. So if you're clever, and if you have the right cards in your hand, you can do a lot. Now, you must play 2 cards in your turn. You may play only 1 card on your opponent's side, only if it makes it better for them. If you play cards only on your own side, at the end of your turn, you draw 2 cards. If you play a card on your opponent's side, then you may draw back up to 6 cards. So if you play 1 card on your opponent's side, you'll be able to play faster. And that's important because once you play every card from your deck, you win. So 2 ways to win. Get rid of all the cards from your deck, or have your opponent where they cannot discard 2 cards on their turn. And that's how you play. Card quality is very good in the game. There's nice linen finish cards. I don't like the motif of death. I don't really, if I want to play this game with Grandma and something, I don't think she would like that, or Uncle Larry might not be a fan of that. I mean, this is the way the game was originally, so it is what it is. And I also wish that this big number in the middle pointed both ways. Like there's a 23. The small numbers do. They're on both sides. I wish the bigger number did too, because you're constantly playing on your opponent's piles. That's being nitpicky. Everything is fine. Fits in the little box here. The rules were very clear and easy to understand. Now, I said at the beginning that I was kind of okay with the game. I didn't dislike it, but I don't love it either. I really like this version. It is really tense because in essence, it's a really simple game. I sit there and go, okay, I'm going to try to play as low cards as I can on the one that's building up, slowly building it up, and I'm going to play as high cards on that one, slowly making it go down. But you are, and you can do pretty well if you play 2 cards per turn. You just slowly do that, draw cards. Although eventually you might have a handful of cards and you go, wow, my card here is a 16. The next highest card I have is a 38. I don't want to play a 38 there. I'll just throw one on my opponent's pile. But you're always helping your opponent out, and you're always sitting there wishing your opponent would help you out. But see, if you just play 2 cards per turn, you might win if your opponent can't play. But if they play 3 cards one turn or 4 cards one turn, they're a turn ahead of you. And thus lies the game. I play this game very aggressively. I have not won. I came really close. But I'll try to play as many cards from my hand as I possibly can. Draw. Play as many cards. Kind of panicking my opponent, because if I'm playing 4, 5, 6 cards every turn and they're playing 2, I'm way ahead of them in the deck. Their hope, though, is that I mess up and then can't play cards. But I think that the game is balanced, that you can lose both ways. Or win both ways. I guess for me it's losing. I've lost where I couldn't play anymore. But I've also lost because my opponent got rid of their hand before I did. Because I played really fast and then I came screeching to a halt because I didn't want to lose the other way. So I'm just playing 2 cards and my opponent was able to discard all theirs. My wife and I play games together. We like back and forth card games where they're not complicated, but you're sitting there trying to outguess the other person's. One of our favorites in that genre is Lost Cities. Lost Cities is a great game that we've enjoyed throughout the past 15, 20 years. This one is very similar in how it feels. It's not the same game. I want to be clear on that. But it gives us that same feel as Lost Cities. And there's the fun of clever card play. You played a 35 of mine. Well, how lucky. I have a 25 in my hand. And now I can play a lot of cards out. And there is card counting. I'm not good enough to do it. But you only have one of each number in your deck. Either way, I think there's a lot of game in here. Yes, it's just numbers with skulls on it for whatever reason. But it's one I think works incredibly well. It plays fairly quickly. It says 20 minutes here. My games have come out closer to half an hour because we're kind of a little bit more thoughtful when we play. But it's still a good time for a little card game like this. To me, I don't know that I'll ever play the game again. The game face-to-face is where it's at. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time. Dice Tower Judgment approved.